the 25th. It's going to be here before you know it. That's when Browns camp opens. You'll have the opportunity to hang out in Berea and see the 4-quarterback race live and in person, like no one else. It's going to be exciting. Mary Kay Cabot will be there. She'll make sure you know everything that's going on as well when you read her in Cleveland.com and in the Plain Dealer as well. Mary Kay Cabot on the North Olmsted Chrysler Jeep Dodge Ram hotline. Hi, Mary Kay. How are you?
I'm doing great, guys. How you doing?
Good.
Hi, Mary Kay.
Counting down the days. I'm ready for football. I'm not going to lie. I'm ready. I'm bored out of my mind. Other than baseball, for the most part. I'm bored. I need to get to football. I got to get there. Help me, Mary Kay. All right, what's the hottest thing? What's the latest thing with the quarterback situation right now? I know you had a really good story about breaking down one of those quarterbacks in particular.
Yeah, I have a little series running right now, and it's on how each one of these guys can win the quarterback competition. So Kenny Pickett ran sometime last week, and then and I just tweeted that out again this morning. And then today, the Joe Flacco one got posted. So running through this, and then, of course, we'll still have Dylan will be next, and then Shador will come last. So just kind of going through what each guy can possibly do, what maybe their strengths are, maybe some of their shortcomings, and how they can get her done.
Why does it feel to me, Mary Kay, that if Joe Flacco is the starting quarterback this year, a lot of things went wrong?
Well, there's a lot of different ways that you can look at that. I think that if Joe Flacco is the starting quarterback this year, it probably just means that in week one, he is the most ready to go out there and win a football game for the Cleveland Browns. I don't necessarily think it means that a lot of things went wrong. I just think from a readiness standpoint, perhaps he's the one that would have the best handle on the scheme, have the best chemistry with his wide receivers and things like that. It doesn't mean that that Kenny can't swoop in there and steal that job by them, but he's really going to have to show that he has a complete mastery of this scheme and this system, and that they don't have to dial it back a lot to put him in there. So these will be some considerations, and I do think that that as the preseason goes along, it will become evident.
Do you still think Pickett's kind of the leading guy for this thing right now, or do you think it's Joe?
I think those guys are probably kind of neck and neck, and it will be determined by style is another thing. When you go with Joe, you will be deciding that you're not going to use some of the quarterback movement that you can do with Kenny Pickett, and you would be giving up some of that movement in the name of those big explosive plays. So it's just a matter of big explosive plays plus sometimes turning the ball over versus quarterback movement and protecting the football. So those are kind of the two sides of the ledger that they'll have to be working on and deciding on. And once again, I think as they go through training camp, and especially those joint practices, particularly the two against the Eagles, I think the starting quarterback will reveal that he's the guy.
If you're the front office or you're Kevin Stefanski and you're looking at the schedule and you see what's ahead of you, how much does that influence who your starting quarterback might be early on in the season?
I don't think that it's going to influence it a lot. I actually have been thinking about that a lot myself. I do think the grueling early part of the schedule is going to be a factor, but I don't think they're looking at it that way. I think that they're just going to choose their quarterback based on what they see in these practices and in these games, and they are not going to let the opponent and the early part of the schedule dictate what they decide to do. That's part of the blocking it out factor that will be part of this quarterback competition. They're not going to let that factor in because anything can happen. Your opponent could have a quarterback issue in the first weeks of the season, and you're not going to see some of the top quarterbacks or their defensive end or whatever the case may be. But I just don't think that they're going to look at that as a humongous factor.
Mary Kay Cabot joining us from the Plain Dealer and Cleveland.com. I think there's something interesting going on with the Washington Commanders right now, and that's with wide receiver Terry McLaurin and contract situation. He wants paid. He had a great year with Jaden Daniels. They brought in Deebo Samuel, which helps them, might not help Terry McLaurin, and there's thought that he might get traded. If you're the Browns, Mary Kay, You going to check into that? You going to take a shot?
Well,
I like McLaurin.
Yeah, I like McLaurin a lot too, and the Browns will always check into anything like that. They will always do that, but I don't get the sense that they're clamoring for a big, high-priced receiver this season. I think if they're going to do something like that, it's going to be next season when they also add potentially their quarterback of the future. I think this year they're probably not going to break the bank on somebody like that. But of course, when a Terry McLaurin comes along, you have to at least consider it. You have to at least look into it, weigh the pros and cons, and determine, what that might look like over the next, 4 years or something like that. So I wouldn't rule it out, but I don't get the sense right now that they're looking to add a big high-priced receiver.
What would the price tag be? I know a lot of teams are, checking into him. Is a second valid, or is that too much?
It's really hard to say. I haven't really gauged the price tag for him at this point. That might be a little high depending on what you have to pay the player. So you have to weigh in the cost of, the contract and all of those kinds of things against what you're willing to give up in draft pick compensation. But I mean, I'm sure some team will think at least about giving them a 2. I'm not sure the Browns would.
If you're Kevin Stefanski and you're walking into this thing and you're looking at your roster right now, and I know we're trying to tweak things, but where do you think he feels like they need the most? Scoring points obviously is one of those things, but where does the improvement really need to come from, and beyond quarterback? So if that's the way you could look at it.
Well, I think it's just got to be the whole offense. I mean, if you look at last year, it was a disaster until they just went back to the drawing board and put in the old Kevin Stefanski scheme and just did what they know works with what they had. So now they've got Tommy Rees as offensive coordinator. They've got some new players. They've got a quarterback competition going on. They've got a completely overhauled running game. It's just the whole offensive operation from minute one has got to be so much better. And it will be, I think, just almost by virtue of the fact that they will run the ball a lot more, and that's going to help the whole football team.
Mary Kay, the situation that the coaches find themselves in, do you think there are serious marching orders from above on this quarterback stuff? Or is it completely going to be who looks good here in training camp and in the preseason? I have no idea. I'm sitting here thinking it's a wide open 4 quarterback race, and not necessarily to start week 1, but to be your main guy this year. What do you think there might be? Is there guidance from above? Is there pressure from above? What do you think it is?
I don't think so. I don't really think there's guidance or pressure from above. I think that Jimmy and Dee Haslam and the ownership group, they really would like to see the Browns win as many games as possible. But that is an organizational philosophy. That is not coming from above. That's something that Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski want as well. This is not, let's see if we can improve that Jacksonville, that first round pick at all, or do anything more to make sure that we get the quarterback that we want next year. That's not what they're going to do this year. That's not how they're going to operate. They are going to go out there and they're going to try to win every single week. And that is the only mandate from anyone.
When you look at the new coaches that are in, the guys that they brought in, who do you think is going to have the biggest impact?
I would think Tommy Rees. I mean, not that they brought him in, but the coaching change of him becoming offensive coordinator.
Okay.
I think that I would think that would probably be the biggest thing, just because of all of the ramifications and everything that we're talking about. I mean, last year just didn't work out with Ken Dorsey. It just did not work. And these guys all have to be in alignment. It seems like they are. And now we have to just see what it looks like when they put it out on the grass.
What sense do you get about Rees as an offensive coordinator, Mary Kay? Is he on the same page as Kevin? I would assume in offensive philosophy to some extent, but everybody has their own thoughts and their own ways of doing things. What do you think Rees brings to this that will enhance what Kevin wants to do?
Well, I think what he brings is just that whole college concepts vibe. I mean, he's coming straight out of the college game. He did last year come out of the college game. And and he and Bill Musgrave, they both have a lot of thoughts and ideas on things that happened at that level. And I think they will incorporate some of those things. I think perhaps more quarterback movement and more motion and things like that. I do think that he will also run the ball a lot. I think you'll see more than just the typical thing that we saw with Joe Flacco when he played here in 2023. I think you, again, will see more quarterback movement when Tommy is kind of running the show.
Mary Kay, I asked this yesterday, and I'm just wondering if all moves now made about this team, because the dome coming to fruition last week, and it just feels like everything pushing forward to going out to Brook Park, is like every move going to be scrutinized as like, oh, that's a move towards the dome, or I just think that people are going to look at it like, oh, well, they got to make sure they have their quarterback by the end of next year because they want to make sure they have that quarterback when they move into the dome. Like, I just have a feeling that that's going to be a catalyst for a lot of the things. I don't know. Have you heard that? I've heard that a little bit. I'm just curious if that's, and I don't know that can be in the mindset of the front office, but it's kind of out there.
Well, they do plan their roster for years out. That's why they draft guys sometimes that are only 20 years old, because they are thinking 3, 4, 5 years ahead. So when you look at it from that standpoint, of course, then they would be looking at a quarterback that would flourish in a dome or enclosed stadium type of situation. So it's definitely going to be a factor, because you will have access to that quarterback for at least 5 years. And hopefully, if he gets to his second contract, a lot more than that. So, yes, I think that will be a consideration.
All right, Mary Kay, let's count down those days as we get ready for camp, and we appreciate it. So thank you, Mary Kay. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary Kay.
Sure. Thanks, guys.
All right, we'll talk to you soon. Mary Kay Cabot from the Plain Dealer in Cleveland.com.